I'm Duke. Did you know that? Good. I lead that with that because we're going to come back to it. This topic is about how to get control of a room, own it through an entire presentation. I mean, how many of you are giving sales presentations to clients? Show of hands. The rest of you don't have clients. Nice. How many of you are getting up in conferences and having to speak at a conference like this? How many of you stand up at cocktail parties and tell terrible jokes? I can do that. Good to see you, Robert. So part of getting to giving a good presentation is the journey involved in learning yourself, your voice, your modulation, the things that make you stand out as a presenter, and starting to master that. So among the many things I have done is I've demonstrated a few things that we're going to touch on in just a moment. I don't use slides a lot, but for this one, there are 10 and a few more, because we have 10 tips, and so therefore that's what we're going to run through. And the first one I gave you, ignoring where I come from, is that my hidden slides are showing. Why is that? You always have technical issues. But it is the opening line that people use, especially when you see newscasters in the field. I'm Duke. I'm live here at the Joomla World Conference. I'm Duke. It's much stronger, more impactful than saying, hello, my name is Duke. Lots of noise in there. Anticlimactic. I'm Duke. It establishes presence. It gives you position in the room. So that is tip number one. Lead with, I'm Duke. Say it with me together. All of you say, I'm Duke. Perfect. And then with that, we lead into the things that help establish where we are and where we fit into context with people. We want to build, to have an impactful presentation, you're going to, in essence, take people down a pathway to a very different idea. But before you can walk that pathway, you have to have some credibility. Now, in most talks that you will see at a conference, people start with who they are. What's really impactful is to start with your audience and what they want. So it's not about you. You guys didn't come here for the Duke show, except for one person who got addicted on Friday. You came here because it's about how you can do a better presentation. So did you notice my opening slide? We'll go back to it. Oh, except there's many slides in between. Sorry about that. I should have had a copy right there. And it's not letting me. Come on. Oh, I missed buttons. Skip it. Well, the opening slide. The nice signature photograph from 123RF of Vancouver. The Joomla logo. The Joomla event name. And little tiny at the bottom, it said presented by Duke Speer. The big thing was the topic. What you came here for. The top 10 things to own the room. And so that's starting with your audience in mind. And part of building a rapport with an audience is your presentation actually starts before everyone walks in. It starts by being fully set up in advance, having your slides actually in order and properly hidden so that it works when the clicker fails you. But also connecting with people as they come in the room and find out why they're here. What is the deliverable you need to deliver so that they're satisfied? And that is what I tried to demonstrate for all of you. I asked you what it was that brought you into this room. Every speech, every presentation has some form of a promise in it. A promise of things to come, a reason why people have attended. That starts with the title of the talk. It starts with the description that's in the printed materials. It starts with the tweets and other social media leading up to the event. It creates an expectation. So you all came here expecting to get something out of it. And my job is I have to deliver on that. And if there's a mismatch between those two things, then we have a challenge. You're going to walk away kind of upset. Well, shoot, I was expecting to deal with presentations and I saw 42 lines of code. Can't believe that. I'm not a tech person. How did he possibly do that? So it is matching the expectations of your audience and making sure that you're aligned to it. There are also some technical things that are involved with this, and it's making sure that you've got all the pieces of your show put together. One is to build that initial rapport so people are listening to you. And the best way to do that is to get on the same emotional plane. It's to start with a story. Stories are a great way of changing the style of presentation. Your voice changes. Your reminiscences put you into a different facial expression. You start recalling things as you express what it's like. I was giving a presentation in Japan to a group of Japanese business leaders, and to try to be impactful at my young age, I was probably 29, I came out with a phrase that just kind of quieted the room. It just tried to be polite and open in their own language and so forth. Dead silence. And it's painful, and you can tell that there's tension in the room. And all of a sudden, the person who introduced me, I leaned over and go, "What did I say?" You have a head of a horse, and with that, it became okay because he laughed, I laughed, the audience was able to break the tension, and understand what it was. But in so doing, I shared an embarrassing moment to help you be in the same space that I am, so now we can build from that. We also try to share common ground in terms of common knowledge, common starting point, because I'm going to give you a radical idea in the course of this talk. It's going to be big. It's part of the promise of why you're here at a conference like this. You want to be inspired, be impressed, learn something new, learn something dramatically new. But before I can do that and give you something that is frame-breaking, I need credibility. And I'm not going to get my credibility by putting up a bio. There were a few pictures that flew by, but ignore those. It is one of the things that will set people apart is in those first couple of minutes to actually spend time talking about yourself. Now you're building a wall between your audience. There's no longer common connection. You're moving away from them instead of to them. The barriers between you get larger. And then if you have a device like a podium that's really in there, boy, do you have walls between you and your audience. So instead, you try to break down all those barriers, try to be in common ground, try to have a connection. And you do that by starting, as was explained by Kevin John last night, start with why. So I'm going to breeze through this a little faster since Kevin John hit it a little bit already, and we don't need to be redundant. But Simon Sinek is an exquisite author, and this is an interesting book. And if you don't know the story of Start With Why, for first impression, go search the TED Talk that's 15 minutes long by Simon Sinek. It is about 2010 and to, I believe it's the Portland TED Group. That will give you enough impression to know exactly why he says what he does. And it's because people build relationships with people and break down barriers by first and foremost having to get past an area of the brain that filters based on emotional relationship. If you try to sell with logic, the filters are still up. You can't get past the barriers to listening to you. You start with the common emotional connection. The common thing that we want to do. We want Joomla to conquer the planet. We want to see Drupal and WordPress and the Internet of devices crumble to their knees. That's the thing that we have in common. It's emotional. It's impactful. That'd be cool, wouldn't it be? How many think it would be cool? Say yes. Yeah. How many think it would be cool? Say yes. Yes. Absolutely. And so that's part of how you can build this relationship. And so without going into the why model, just know that you need to kind of build that emotional boundary first so that you can jump past it to the how you do what you do. And the very last thing, if you're in a sales presentation or something like that, then you get to the product. Because by then they're primed up, they're curious. Well, what is this little extension you've got? You know, now you got me excited that we're on common ground. We both want to conquer the world together. We're both on the same mission, the same path, the same trajectory. So we clearly have aligned interests, and you've introduced me to your company and the how you do what you do, that you're being environmentally responsive. You only use green servers. You do all the things that just feel right and resonate with me. And so then what is it you do again? By then they're ready for you. They're ready to hear what it is that you're trying to present. Come on. There we go. The first expert on public speaking was Aristotle. Ethos, pathos, logos was written. And it is about the connections that we're going for. And to recognize that you have different audience members who are on different tracks. It's just like some people are visual learners, some are auditory learners, some are tactile learners. Same idea as you're presenting, there's a need to connect with people through the character, through the relationship. Someone who found that when I was describing how to be hooked on something on Friday, that created a bond of character that said, this guy seems to know what he's talking about, so I want to see his next presentation. So there's a character connection for one person. Some will connect because of the empathy you share, that you're in a common space, that it's part of the kindred spirit that you're in and the journey that you're on together. And then there are those who need the logical proof. In the fundraising world, I use a fundraising piece to illustrate this, that it is a two-sided piece of paper that we prepare for a nonprofit. One side is the dogs and the cats and the heartfelt stuff, the great photos, the kids getting licked, all the visual stuff that is really, really rich. And the other side has the financials, the number of, how the outcomes, the percentage of impact, all the great measures. And when I'm going to go talk to that person, they flip to both sides, and all of a sudden one side will end up and they're spending more time studying that one than the other one, and I suddenly know how to talk to that person. It may be one, if it's a couple, one person is there looking at the numbers and look at the numbers, so I know I have to justify the ROI of that investment and to pay attention to the numbers for that person. But the other person may be looking at the fluffy stuff and the hearts and flowers, and they don't want to hear a number that will glaze them over, turn them off. I will have lost the connection. So that piece of paper and just which side they land on gives me an insight as to what's interesting to them. I've also talked to them, but that is a very telling one. So number 3 in this list, set the stage. Start with your why. Why do you do what you do? What is it that is the big promise of what people are going to get out of your session? I want every session I go to at a Joomla conference to be impactful. I don't want to go to a session where the presenter feels like they're half asleep and therefore I start to nod off. If they're not excited about their topic, why should I? So start to build that connection and lead with it. I'm getting to really love this clicker. Let's do a little exercise. I'd like all of you to put your hands up. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to put your hands down as soon as you feel like I have looked at you for 3 seconds while I am speaking. So everyone's hands up first. Hands in the air. So as soon as you think I have looked at you for more than 3 seconds, I'd like you to put your hand down. And then we're going to keep doing this for a little while. And I've got some stubborn people over here, but there's a point being raised that at some point I'm going to get a hand down, but I'm really working at it. And so there's a group here that I'm looking at directly and see if I've got that accomplished. And I'm still working at it. I'm a little too close to my audience, so it's not working here, but I'm at least going to get the one in the back. And this is going to be a long exercise at this rate because you're all demanding very personal attention. What's being illustrated is there's a technique for using a room that you can find about 7 zones, places in the room. And where I started, I was actually looking at a chair, which is why she didn't respond to it, because the angle was so close that I'm so close to her that she couldn't define it. And likewise, I was looking at a chair there, and it hit you, but it didn't hit you too, and I expected it to. But with that, there are zones that you can just focus at, and all those people will think you're talking to them. And you can reach 20 people at once by focusing at a dot in the middle. Yeah?
I think it might have to do with distinguishing between iris and pupil.
Correct.
That close already that we can see directly.
You can see exactly where I'm at. Yeah, so distance is part of it. If I was up on the JWC stage, I could have hit the whole room, and very easily, because just hitting one table would knock it out. You're absolutely right. Also speaking is a... Yes. Yes. Those on drugs have an easier time too. Yeah, get them so dilated that you can't tell where they're looking. But also speaking is a sequence of one-on-one conversations. And a lot of lot of what I see in people that I work with that get frustrated with their speaking is this sense of dread, of fear that they're talking to so many people at once. It's such a big audience. No, it's an audience of one person. And oh, by the way, as soon as we finish that conversation, I'm going to have a conversation with another one person. But in the course of doing that, you cover the whole room. That also goes into your speaking style. And the style, if we were in an amplified setting, I could be actually using my couch voice, and I could be sitting next to you having a very nice conversation. And unfortunately, those in the back of the room can't hear it. But in an amplified setting, you do move to your indoor voice, your common voice. The first time I was actually televised on television, recorded for television, the director had the worst time coming back to me and having to re-record because there was nobody near me that I was speaking to. And so I was constantly projecting so the people back in the sound booth would hear me. Knowing that, even though logically I knew I was fully mic'd up, I projected because I've been taught to stage project. And it was so frustrating for them until they finally put someone right in front of me to talk to, and that solved the issue. I could speak personally to the one person and my voice changed. The timbre went down. The pauses became a little bit more real. It all came together rather well. So we're after connection. And the connection can be on an emotional level. It's finding commonality in knowledge, in starting place, where you are together on your journey, so that by the end of the talk you get to a very interesting place on your journey. And it is about knowing your audience and connecting with your audience. So tip number 4 is to connect. Make sure that you get that connection. Let's see. I'm a photographer. I love shooting. It is an avocation that somewhat turns into a business, in that when I get a website design project, I will always reshoot everything because I want it in consistent style, consistent look, same type of effects brought over all the images, to the point where, as I design a template for an organization, I will give them a copy of Lightroom with presets loaded in it that will do the same photographic treatment to every image, and with one click it will color cast the image the way that we're doing for a consistent look on the site, and FTP it to the exact right folder within the Joomla system so that it is findable when they load their article and they know exactly where to find it. So it takes a whole lot of steps out of the process. But being a photographer, I also look at the concepts of photography to understand concepts of public speaking. You want to have a consistent theme. You want to have focus. You need an appropriate exposure and contrast in your talk and composition. And so we're going to dig into some of these. The next one that we're really going to dig into is exposure. And one of the goals in exposure in today's modern cameras happens to be managing noise. If you don't have enough light, all the little pixels that don't get enough energy start sparkling. Noise is what you get when you don't have enough light to photograph a subject. Noise interferes with the delivery of a very clear message. So you, as a speaker, you need to take control of the room or the environment that you're in. You need to eliminate all sources of noise. It can be as simple as closing the back door so that people walking by won't distract you. It could be things like too many sources of visual noise on the stage. Being up on a stage like that, sometimes that is a whole lot of clutter that takes the eyes away from whatever the content is. People aren't coming to see the slides. They're coming to hear the speaker. And some of the best presentations I know of have 0 slides. It is the speaker truly connecting, delivering the substance and the knowledge that they intimately know, and passing that on. And it doesn't take any slides. Slides are for the amateur, the people like me, who need a note to keep in track. It also separates 2 different styles of presentation. One style is the keynote style presentation, which is all about inspiration. It is about the loftier picture. It doesn't need slides. The other is more like this one, which is a curriculum-based presentation. That there are specific topics we're going to walk through in order, and I have to stay on schedule and get through them, otherwise we will have blown our hour. Speaking of, hey, we look pretty good. So it is managing the room. One of the things I did as I came into the room, since you had asked how I rearranged this room, I had moved the screen in front of the light that was over it so that the light didn't spill onto the screen. It's something that's bugged me all day, but I figured I'd demonstrate it with this class. I put a drink coaster in front of that light so that when I'm standing over on this side, which I ended up being over here, but if I was presenting from this side, that there wouldn't be this huge backlight that would blow out the camera or blow out your view of me. There's nothing like a harsh backlight to distract away from the subject that you're presenting on. There's the noise of things that are just going on in the room. Visual noise. I don't have a badge on anymore. I don't have things in my pocket. They're completely emptied out. It's all those little distractors that if you get nervous and all of a sudden you're flicking your pocket, people kind of really zero in on. So take away all those distractors that you can possibly take away. Get rid of the noise that's in the environment. It is also the noise that may be in your voice. Our voices are resonant because we pull our breath out of our chest, we bring it up through our heads, and through our mask we've got resonating cavities. And if you have a cold like I do, you need to go out and clear your sinuses really fast because your voice gets really resonancy in the wrong spaces and you start to sound like Fran Drescher, and it really gets grating on an audience. So do your best to clear everything out before you start to present. Noise also are things like housekeeping items. How often do you go into a presentation and someone says, well, let's start with a few housekeeping items. The bathrooms are off over here. How did I take care of housekeeping items in this talk? I did. Did you notice how? Did I invite you to ask questions at any time? You did ask questions, so did I invite you? Exactly. Before I even started, I put my housekeeping up on a slide, which did not detract from the energy I started with. The moment I hear a speaker say housekeeping items, you know what's out? Oh, good, housekeeping. I can check the email. Let's see what's going on today. It is the invitation to check out. And so you will instantly lose the connection with the audience, and then you have to work to get it back. That's noise. Let's now work on to the next parts of this. Friction. The challenges of noise as in your audio delivery. And so very quickly we're going to look at a few devices that you should just simply know. There are things called microphones. They're really handy. Some may actually work, unlike this one. You know, so this one is not filling the room with my presence, where I can hear the basis of it. But when you are using microphones, you need to know some of the tricks about them. They come in a number of different styles, and you need to be aware which one you have, which one you're wearing. This particular one is omnidirectional. And unlike just a normal presentation where you would be unmiked, with an omnidirectional mic, it will pick up sound from you, and it will pick it up consistently, whether I'm looking this way, or I'm pointing at the slides, or I'm talking to you, because it's a constant distance. The audio engineer who's managing it has a far better time, because this will consistently get the same vocal pattern and volume. There's nothing worse to be at a presentation and watch someone who actually has a microphone stuck to the podium, and when they go to work a part of the room, they're sitting like this, but then they go talk to the other side, and all of a sudden nobody can hear them, and the voice dropped. And then they come back to the other side, and all of a sudden people can hear them. Or worse, they go talk to the slides, and the slides are there, and you can barely hear what's going on, and then they're back. So there is the art of using the microphone correctly. If you're stuck with a podium mic, and it will not come off the stand, then you work relative to the audience. You work around the microphone, so the microphone is always between you and the people or the things you need to talk to. So you revolve around the microphone and keep that magic distance. Better, take it out. If you can possibly hold it, do so. The microphone patterns that we most care about, there are microphones that are called omnidirectional. Doesn't matter where the noise is around the microphone, it's going to hear it. There are also directional microphones, and this is a directional microphone. You hold this microphone this way, very few people will hear you. The reason is it's listening to the ceiling. You need to hold it pointing at your mouth. You need to have it a consistent distance away. You need to get your rock star on and pull it out and really work with it. You can also, if you're comfortable with it and the audio engineer is good with it, you can hold it down here and use your chest as an anchor without rubbing. Just keep it off of your chest, but put your wrist on your chest as an anchor so that you don't keep moving it around. And it helps you remember that thing needs to stay anchored there. It's not going to move. It gets to be a real challenge when this thing, you start going along, especially in a recording situation like this, and then all of a sudden it's down here, and the audio engineer is turning up the gain and having all kinds of challenges. Speaking of gain, what's the reason why you hear feedback in an auditorium? What's wrong with where the microphone is? The issue is the microphone is not here. It is a natural instinct when you hear that feedback going off as a speaker to go, oh, you pull it away, you do whatever it is. Oh, it's getting too strong, I'm going to hold it down here. Well, what's that an invitation to do? That's up to the audio guy to now turn up the sensitivity even more to try to hear your voice even further away. So now it's hearing the speakers up there. You got to get in close. If you ever hear feedback, go close. That's the trick to solving all that. And then you too can get your rock star on and just challenge the world with that incredible presence. And even do excellent conferences. It is hard to hold the microphone through an entire presentation, especially if you've got notes to work with or you're trying to do computer setups. So that's where I really like a headset. They are always constant distance. They are the easiest thing to wear. There are some very aesthetic ones that will disappear, that they are skin-colored and little tiny condenser microphones, and they are actually some of the highest quality microphones available. There's a good example. And then there's this guy who's your friend. The audio engineer in the back will make you a hero. You don't necessarily need to worry about how you're projecting. If they're anticipating how you're projecting and that you're about to do something that's very big in the room, they know to take down the volume and anticipate that so that you don't create a whole lot of distracting high frequency break on the speakers, that you don't take it out of vocal range. So, yes? You redo a rehearsal. You do a tech rehearsal before the talk. And I usually give them a script if I've got a main stage type presentation. So they've got a script and they've got technical notes down the side in the margin of where certain key slide transitions are, when the computer's audio needs to be on, and so you don't leave it on full time for fear that it will generate feedback or 60 cycle hum. So it's only keyed up when it actually has a signal to produce. A number of different tricks like that. But to give them a technical script, and that you're about to do something very dramatic, or you help them by taking your microphone away and then bring it back when you're done.
What about like a lavalier?
Lavaliers, that's their challenge. They get to just live with that. But that's where the script helps. So as long as they've been through it once, they know that something's going to come that's going to be a challenge. They know to turn down. As whoever has to do post, whoever does post, yeah, lavalier, you could turn away from it, but I wouldn't. Lavaliers, are the ones that you wear on your chest, and we have one here. They just clip on. They're very nice. They work when you're facing straight ahead, and they don't work so well when you're looking to the side. So that's why they're a little bit frustrating. For women, the particular challenge is being able to wear them centered, because mostly your necklines are to one side. You never want to clip a lavalier away from center. Find a way to get it to center, because that's where the center of your range of head motion will be. And you want it to be a fair degree away from where your mouth is, so that even if you're turned away, the distance really hasn't changed all that much. Where if it's way up close, it's now picking up the resonance that's in your tongue and throat. It sounds weird. It hears things differently than the audience would hear it. And also, it's much more sensitive to the rotation. So you want it down a ways, but there's a balancing act, and the sound engineer will help you figure out how far it can be away without causing a source of feedback. You also need to be aware of motions on your chest when you have one. You can't demonstrate the resonance of your sound because you're busy hitting that microphone and really disrupting it. Or wearing a jacket and have the microphone under the jacket. The rustling sound will be all that people hear, and it's very disruptive. There are tons of tools that we use to present. Each of them has their advantages, but for the most part, they are the disadvantage. I am a huge fan of the one-word slide. You're not seeing it today, but you saw it in the Hooked presentation, where just about everything that was in that presentation was a photograph and a word over it. It's that simplicity that really comes through and is impactful and sends a single message at a point in time. The slides that fail are ones with more than 3 bullet points. If it's a whole recipe on the wall ready to read, it should not be in your presentation. It should be in the appendix of the presentation after your thank you slide, your closing slide, so that when the people download the slides, they get that nice recipe. But if you're presenting it live, break it apart, each bullet to a slide, so that each one is discussed independently. If there's a reason to have the flowchart, then gray out or dim down the elements that you're not going to talk about. So if you've got a very complicated flowchart and you're really trying to take people through the map, that's when an overlay that turns the opacity of everything down to 50%, but then highlights one thing, that's how you can get that focus to the one thing that you want to talk about. So there's lots of ways to do that. So circling back to our photographic view of things here, we're jumping into levels of contrast. One of the things I really love in a photograph is how to get a lot of contrast in a view. Our eyes are drawn to it. We look for hard edges. If a photograph is out of focus or doesn't have enough contrast, it's wishy-washy. Well, presentations that don't have contrast are wishy-washy. I've got to tell you, they can put me right out. So look for ways to have contrast. And there's 4 major ways to put contrast into a presentation. One is vocal. You're hearing me modulate my voice far more than you would hear if we were talking one-on-one. I am performing. I am on a stage. I am busy trying to use much more of my vocal range to bring impact, to bring ideas to life, to subtly emphasize things. There are times when I really want to make a bold emphasis. And so I'm doing contrast with pacing. Pauses are your friend. You really want to make a point, shut up. Say something profound like, I am so glad that Randy is in the room. And then just be quiet and let everyone focus on, why is he picking on Randy? And what is it about Randy that I don't know that means that by the end of this conference, I actually want to walk up and say hello and meet Randy? If Duke is that impressed with him, he must be a great guy, and he is. So there are ways to actually build emphasis. It's a habit. You have to get rid of it. There's also ways of building contrast that are by using your position in the room. This is the owning the stage part of it. Being aware of what's around you and what you can do with it. So in some ways I have moved things out. The projector was way up front and I moved it back. I moved the slides. I did a bunch of positioning in the room. But you've also seen me take different positions as I walk the room, as I walk this apron, and actually sometimes use it as a cage. It is a cage because the camera has to follow me. So I will drive him nuts if I spend too much time walking clear out to the audience. But I have to tell you, if I had someone who's checking their email and spending way too much time screwing around with stuff on his tablet, I'd actually be standing right here, and then to really curb his behavior, I'd make eye contact. And if by then I haven't really moderated his behavior, I'm going to call attention to it. Like, how many people think Robert, the power of the peer group is very strong. But in working a room and being positional, there are a couple different types of movements that have different reactions. If I started off just kind of going like this and you know, looking like I'm kind of pacing back and forth, what's it going to make you instinctively think of? Any ideas? Nervous. A caged tiger. It is my anxiety being expressed, and it raises the anxiety of everyone watching. Primordially, we are tuned in to notice that kind of a movement and going, oh, that is a demonstration of anxiety. What am I not aware of that that animal is? And for my own survival, I better be aware of it. So we start heightening up our senses, and it's all noise. It's all distraction. So until you are comfortable in the room, until you have your own confidence, don't walk. What movement would be a little bit better if I was going in a circle? Kind of being a little thoughtful about this, but what does that do? Anything come to mind? It's kind of a halfway in between point. It's that I am comfortable enough that I'm not pacing, but I'm not so comfortable that I'm actually working the room. The most profound way to work the room and actually make a point and be impactful is to project into the room and talk to somebody. And then you reset yourself back. And so it's motions that are forward and back. And as you're doing forwards and backs, you can speak while you're doing it. The one I don't want to see you do, if you're going to be doing something like this, is actually talking while you walk, and that you're going someplace where your eyes are away from the audience, and then you turn and you plant yourself. If you really need to reposition in the room, you need to do it with purpose, and you do it also to recover time. So if I am struggling in my talk, oh my gosh, what's my next topic? Oh, brain is derailed. You know how nobody will notice that I am derailed if I do this. The next thing I'm going to talk about, you walking with purpose. Get to where you are, turn to the audience, and then open your mouth. Do it in sequence, and you can walk the entire stage, and people are not distracted by it. It is actually one of those creative pauses that will emphasize what's coming next, and in addition, gives you the time to recover while your train is derailed, instead of trying to fill with it. Contrast also comes in storytelling. So temporal contrast comes from the idea that I might be telling you a story about how I met my wife, in that we were in the third floor of a wonderful club, businessman's club in Los Angeles, and I walked in and there was this woman who was sitting at the bar talking to friends, and I was just mesmerized, and the doves took flight. Some enchanted evening started coming out of the airwaves, and clearly it was love at first sight. Then again, we got divorced last year. But let me tell you about the engagement. That is an example. Actually, we're not divorced. We are very happily married. But that was time travel. That's where instead of telling the story in order and having my climax be the divorce, I got it in there so that I could then tell something out of order, out of sequence of what led up to that event. So I gave you the punchline at the beginning to diffuse it so that you would pay attention to the journey. So you can use sequence, time, as a way to develop contrast by breaking logical chronological order. You can also use the structure of your story. So we've already talked about earlier about how you can use storytelling as a way to have a different style of presentation. As you move from storytelling, you can go to, all right, show of thumbs. How many think the Joomla World Conference is a winner? Thumbs up. All right. Interject interaction. Interject ways of getting people involved with it. All of these will change the structural delivery and create contrast compared to what came before. You're different. You've just broken up the flow of concentration. You've got people re-engaged with what's going on. We've hit most of these things on the environment. One is to be very aware that these rooms, for example, have really bad lighting. And if you know where your lighting is, you can look like a ghost with your mask eyes completely blacked out, looking like a raccoon. And it's really hard to pay attention to someone like that and receive their facial expression. Kevin John last night asked me to give him critique on his presentation. And I told him one of the things that was a challenge for him was that he needed to be able to read his presentation, and his solution for having to read the presentation is he went clear to the back curtain and clear at the back curtain, he was out of the fall of the lights. His face wasn't lit. His body was nicely lit, but his face was all in shadow. Be aware of your light. Know where the sweet spot is in the room. Test it out in advance. Walk around with your hand to see what kind of shadows you get. And whether or not, if I stood right about there and marked a spot, I've got fairly soft light that's not too harsh. There's not too many hard shadows on it. So be aware of the light. Be aware of the podium. It's a wall between people, the speaker and the audience. If it's in the way, try to get out of the way. Try to learn your presentation well enough that you can give it without having your speaker notes in front of you, as I seem to be successfully doing so far, that I'm not having to look at it. But also be aware that all those barriers can be overcome by using things like what we call a confidence monitor. So it's take your computer screen and actually set it right there. So as I'm talking to you, that's actually a natural line of sight for me to be able to read from a distance, and I'll still have good eye contact with the person sitting there. We have confidence monitors in the big room. They're hidden behind the little cardboard decorations. And had Kevin John known about it, I was in there, I'd have lifted that podium completely out of the way so that he could just speak from the confidence monitors, because you don't need the device to be able to click to it. So, a whole lot better. We talked about move, pause and turn, and then present. And that's so that you can think, take a moment and edit what you're about to say, and then say it. Whenever you're kind of off track, take the time to think about what it is, and don't just immediately blurt it, edit it. Takes a while to learn to do this. But you can do this in your own day-to-day life. As you're dealing with people, you're thinking about things, and you're talking to someone. Think of an idea. Take enough time to edit it to a very concise, crystal clear sentence. Then say it. You'll cut the number of words you use in half. You will make a much more impactful point about whatever the point is. You won't ramble. It's hard to learn that pause. It's hard to take that 30 seconds, which then later on becomes 5 seconds. But that impact helps put the show together. So we've got all of our different types of contrast. Our next one, as we work down the list, we're looking on focus. Each talk has to have a focus. What is your one big idea that you want everyone to walk away with? If you have more than one, you have a challenge. And I have jumped subjects against my slides. So focus. Focus on who you are, what you're about, what you're good at, and why you're speaking. I am not an entertainer. If you saw me up on that stage trying to tell a joke, you'll be just like all the people I went to college with who said, you can't tell a joke to save yourself. Know that you are not humorous, and don't try to be. You know, there's an anecdote about always lead with a funny story. If you can't tell a joke, be your genuine, authentic self and don't tell a joke. It will not work. And unless that joke leads right into the story that you're trying to tell and the message you're trying to deliver, it's noise. If it doesn't help cement the idea that you're trying to set up, it's noise. It also gets in the way of building the initial rapport. How many people think a magician knows about Joomla and what it takes to build sites and survive in the business world of open source, where everyone has an expectation of software being free and therefore services should be free? Is that guy going to convince you? The guy who's very cleverly did a great magic trick to get your attention and roped you in? No, there's a disconnect. It's not part of his message unless he's got a real good story for how to deal with cards until a magic trick is going to be like building a website is a magic trick. It requires a whole lot of distraction from what the goals are so that the customer doesn't realize you didn't deliver. Come on, go. I think I'm doing this. Oh, my battery's running low. How nice. Go away. And especially don't do a Brian Tiemann. For those who are not laughing, Brian Tiemann is rather well known in our community, and his last presentation at JN Beyond or Joomla World Conference involved a costume just about like this, and he was trying to bring some humor and levity to what it was like to be on our leadership teams. Kind of an appropriate costume for our leadership teams, but just the same. No. But be your genuine, authentic self. Nothing will cause greater disconnect in the message you're trying to deliver than to be the noise in the way of the message. If you are not being genuine to yourself, you don't know how to present according to your own values, your own beliefs, what the things that motivate you, your audience can't connect to you. It just doesn't work. And going to composition. The big idea. Every talk here at this conference, if it was done well, it had one big idea. So let's go back to Stephen Fisher's talk yesterday morning. He had one central idea. What do you think it was? Zombies. Zombies are coming to get you. Was that the big idea? Randy will remember because I actually talked to him about it. Oh, okay. How about let's pick on one today. What was Luke Summerfield's big idea? Change the way we develop websites. Very true. And so part of that, we're just finishing up. So you're early. Please. A recurring service instead of a one-time service. Absolutely. If you really want to build your business, that is the way to accomplish it. So if that's the big idea he wanted to leave behind, did he accomplish that? And now every big idea also needs a matching promise. At the end of the talk, what will be delivered to the audience? And this is not stated in the talk. You don't necessarily communicate what your promise is, although there is one. My promise actually was stated. Before you leave here, you're going to have 10 ways to improve the way you public speak. Not all of them will be relevant to you, but I'm hoping every person in here will walk away with 3 things that they will think about the next time they're giving a presentation. So that's my promise, to have enough diversity of ideas here that no matter what level of speaker you were, each of you got 3 things out of this talk. And my hope is that it's delivered. But my big idea is I want everyone to present better at a Joomla conference. We all can be better entertained in these sessions. We don't need to sleep half the day. And so, having those big ideas makes a difference. And for Steve Fisher, his big idea, he's tired of having a disconnect with the environmental world that's around us, and that all these things are being done because of business instead of what's best for the planet, for the environment, for all the different departments that are trying to work together. Kevin John's all about, if we don't master data, we're going to be left behind. And so his talk was all about the underlying data and to throw away the UI layer and ignore that. So those are the big ideas. And so then as you construct your talk, you want to go through line by line, topic by topic, and discard anything that does not support the primary through line. Don't go on an aside. I kind of violated this on my talk on Friday, the hooked talk. The big idea was that Joomla can actually be more than just a CMS. It can actually interface with apps and have a whole new marketplace where Joomla does the curation work. And a whole new purpose for the Joomla project. And the promise on that one was to start seeing new ways in the world that you work in where there is a better role for APIs and connections of applications. So that was the connection that we're trying to draw. So as you start developing your next talk, get your one big idea, really work on it, make sure it's big. Don't go wussy on me. Don't go halfway. Oh, we could use Joomla to have a better commenting system that would, might make, blondes that are 40 years old and weightlifters be better commenters. That's not big. It needs to be big. So get that topic in there. Oh, keep firing that laser off. Oh, you got it. Let's see if it gets done. We get done before it does. Come on, there we go. Practice. Can't say it enough. Talks need to be rehearsed. It was very obvious that Kevin John's talk last night was the first time he was giving that specific talk. He virtually had to read the whole thing. He couldn't get to the point of bare speaker notes that were just abstract items from which he could take off of. A few years ago, we did a program called Joomla Ignite, and a number of people participated. Randy was one of those. These were people who had to give a 5-minute talk. 5 minutes is an eternity when giving a presentation, compared to 45 minutes where you can just kind of slide all the way through and work off of notes and have a good time. To make an impact in 5 minutes, you have to be terribly focused on what it is you want to say and know what it is. TED Talks are notorious for the amount of preparation that goes into them. To be considered for a local TED Talk, you have your topic and your complete presentation done 6 months out, and you spend 6 months rehearsing in front of live audiences before you actually get to the live stage. Huge amount of preparation goes into it. And if you don't have the preparation in there, it shows. You can get to the point where you actually have, I love it, we did lose the battery. All right, bye-bye. But you can get to the point where the talk actually has a whole lot of solid, concrete, deliverable value in it by concentrating your effort and getting down to the point where you've got 3 words as a bullet on a speaker's note that is sufficient to give you an entire sentence or paragraph of idea. All it takes for me to be able to extemporaneously talk about the next topic might be the next slide that's got 1 word on it that reminds me what I'm supposed to do next, or it might be the 3 words on the script in front of me that I just need to know the three words, and then I know where to go from there. My brain will kick in, oh yeah, at this point I wanted to talk about how to talk extemporaneously from a script, and which are totally incongruent. So, and the final one, which is, I'm really wishing I had my slide, but it is end with the big ending. With your battery going out, with your screen going blank, with the most impressive way to bring people to a close, have a conclusion to your talk. Have a punchline, and have it be the circle back to the story that started the talk. This is the point where you actually deliver the promise. This is the point where you can use creativity and pauses to take a few moments to actually have eye connection with every single person in the room to cement the fact that I had a whole bunch of one-on-one conversations, and that everyone's starting to feel that, hey, I actually got to talk to this guy and felt like I had a one-on-one conversation even though I was surrounded by a whole bunch of eavesdroppers. So with that, you get the whole combination of experiences coming together. So my hope is that with that, you have all become enriched. You will give better presentations. And thank you for attending.